So hi, I'm Mimi Scheller, Dean of the Global School, and I want to welcome you to our showcase conversation, interactive discussion on project-based learning and the future, for the age of AI. And I'm going to give a little introduction about why we're holding this event and what it's about, because this is one of our Global School forums, but it also comes out of the work of the task force for the future of project-based learning. And I'm going to introduce our task force, first of all. So WPI has earned a reputation for preparing graduates who are ready to step into the workforce with the essential skills that are built through project-based learning. As you all know, theory and practice helps us learn critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, cultural agility, creative innovation, many of the most important skills in today's world. Many of our incoming students are already what you might call AI natives, like digital natives, but AI natives, and all of us require AI fluency in the world today as we step out and begin our careers, or those of us who are trying to upskill, reskill what we know. And WPI produces leaders in integrating real-world projects into STEM education. And today, that demands integrating AI capabilities into our project-based learning. And we believe the best way to do that is by co-designing projects with interdisciplinary teams, culturally specific sponsors, real locations, really helping our students engage in ethical reflection about the interactions between technology and society. That's what our project-based learning has always done, and that's what we need to do more than ever for this age of artificial intelligence. So last year, President Wong and Provost Sears asked me to convene a task force on the future of project-based learning in relation to new and emerging technologies. And we worked on both AI and extended reality, VR, AR. That we're going to save that part for another session similar to this one, probably in C-term. But we decided to just focus on artificial intelligence for now. And we are launching a white paper, which we worked on through meetings all of last spring, with a group of WPI experts in project-based learning. These were our contributors, including Arne Gericke, Dean of Undergraduate Studies, Anna Gold, the university librarian, Art Heinricher, who was kind of coming back to us as working on President's Special Projects, Stephen McCauley, the director of the Global Lab, Sarah Stanlick, Associate Dean of the Global School, Chris Wobe, Director of the Center for Project-Based Learning, and we had contributions from Jesse Hill, Director of the Morgan Teaching and Learning Center, and today we're also being joined with help from Kimberly LeChasseur, also of the Morgan Center and the Center for Project-Based Learning. And also many thanks to our Global School Operations Manager, Dawn Farmer, who helped make this program possible. So I'll just say a couple words about the white paper, and Steve McCauley is going to introduce more about it. But in it, we were trying to reflect on what we are learning about how our faculty and students are already using AI in their projects, because many of you already are doing that. We also wanted to reflect on how project collaboration dynamics and processes and deliverables might be enhanced with integration of AI. And we also realized as we were doing that, that we also wanted to think about how the integration of AI into project-based learning in diverse real-world contexts can help make applied AI better. It makes for better artificial intelligence applications. We believe that the best way to ensure responsible AI use is through providing our students with experiential project-based learning opportunities that allow you to critically test AI in real-world problem solving with diverse partners. And project-based learning is not simply reacting to the disruption of AI. It's not that it's a threat to our educational model, which I think a lot of people feel in the classroom, like AI is some kind of threat and it's making things, people are somehow taking shortcuts. but rather we believe that we have the most important pedagogical practices to offer for education that meets today's challenges. That is project-based learning for responsible, ethical, and human-centered learning, which is exactly what we all need for the age of AI. And that's what we will be talking about today. And I'll just say that through PBL, we're seeking to emphasize what I call the art in artificial intelligence, meaning the creativity that it requires, the on-your-feet thinking, the flexibility, the dynamic trial and error of situated experimentation, practice, application. And we also seek to test the limits of intelligence. Intelligence as a quality that does not simply inhere in people, and it does not simply inhere in machines, but rather it emerges from the interactions between people, technologies, and collaborative contexts of problem solving. And that's why we believe that WPI's model of PBL is at the front of the AI disruption, revolution, transformation, whatever you want to call it, in education, and it will carry us into the future to responsibly address complex local and global challenges at the intersections of science, technology, and society, as we have always done at WPI. And I'm now going to hand over to Steve McCauley, Director of the Global Lab, who's going to say more about the task force report and today's event. And then we'll be assisted by Sarah Stanlick, Associate Dean of the Global School, who will help just sort of guide us through today's program. So welcome and thank you.
Hey everybody, thanks a lot for coming. Thanks, Mimi. We're launching the white paper today. Mimi introduced a little bit about it, and I hope some of you have had the chance to read it. We sent it around, and we can make sure that you do get to see that if you haven't seen it yet. And so what we're doing in the task force and what we tried to do in the paper is to present a vision for how we can build on what WPI already does really well with our project-based learning pedagogy, and particularly this human-centered flavor of our project-based learning. And when we started out in this endeavor, having these conversations about what this could look like, we were reminded, Sarah Stanlick actually put it on the table, that, hey, let's make sure we don't forget about what we do really well as we think about how things may be changing. And that was kind of an orienting kind of principle for us going through it. And so what I wanted to start out with here with this first talk is about this human-centered project-based learning that we do at WPI. And you'll hear more in the other talks about how folks are integrating AI into their project-based learning work. But we just wanted to center this human-centered part of it first. And so it's fitting, actually, to start my talk that I'm going to rely on a student project team from WPI. And some of you will be familiar with this piece of work. It was a work that a humanities and arts project team did, actually, under the supervision of Tom Robertson. And they created a documentary about the history of the IQP, or more particularly the context that led to the creation of the IQP. And if you haven't seen this yet, check it out. It's a really important piece of work. And what this team did is they described the social context that was bubbling up that led to the transformative introduction of the WPI plan that led to our project-based learning pedagogy. And what they identify in this history is a sense of what they call a socio-technical divide, kind of an anxiety about technology and society. And they point to a couple of particular things. Anxiety about the double-edged nature of new technologies, about the environmental crisis resulting from technologies flourishing without concern for nature, the failure of technology-centered strategies in international development and the Vietnam War, and a foment for change among university students. And this wasn't just about the Vietnam War and about social issues, but about education itself and about students wanting to have an education that they felt better prepared them. So this is the context that this team discovered in the history of the IQP. To read a quote that they say in the video, the 1960s and early 1970s were a time of rethinking, a rethinking of technology and its use in Vietnam, a rethinking of America's role in the international community, a rethinking of human responsibility toward the environment, a rethinking of what college education meant. Here's the objective of the WPI plan. I'm sure some of you have seen this, just to hit on a couple key details. So the objective is that students acquire skills for observation, action, and independent thought, learn concepts, not just formulas and facts, learn to deal with real problems and integrate their knowledge, not just pass exams and accumulate credits, learn to question, not just accept passively. That is, the plan creates an environment in which the students can learn to learn. The project approach to learning was selected as a major vehicle. So the WPI plan, of course, gave birth to the MQP, and then the IQP, and our other project requirements came later. But what I think is really important in this is what I call the ethos of care in the WPI plan. So I think as we move into this age of AI, it's not just about project-based learning. We know project-based learning is more and more important, but I think it's the particular flavor of project-based learning that's evolved at WPI, which I think has care at its heart. You can see in this description that it's a care about applying technologies ethically and working in the world with communities in ethical ways. It's also a deep care for the individual humans, for the students who are developing and using these tools. And that remains really important to us. Here's a couple of quotes by people who have been involved in the IQP over the years from Professor Alan Hoffman. There's a need for everyone to participate in activities for the greater good. And engineers are unique in a technological society because they understand the technology better than other people in society. So they have the ability to be leaders in society. And Bill Grogan, the first Dean of Undergraduate Studies, who was involved in the creation of the WPI plan, the first thing we want to do is individual responsibility, freedom to develop your own curriculum with your advisor. Let's get your credentials by doing something. You can learn by doing. So again, that deep sense of care for the individual students, that's what's coming through in this plan. As WPI's IQP especially really took off in its kind of international global dimensions, it may not have been anticipated that it would become that global when they first created the plan, but it's actually a natural offshoot of a pedagogy that's based on students working out in the world with partners, with communities, with teammates, doing things that matter in the world, solving authentic problems. So it really was a natural outgrowth that the WPI IQP especially became so global in its orientation. And we know that that global project experience has only enhanced those really important human-centered skills that our students are developing, enhancing the ability to view issues from different perspectives, expanding understanding of connections between technology and society, expanding understanding of global issues, enriching life in ways not necessarily academic or work-related, help developing stronger personal character, enhancing ability to speak clearly and effectively, enhancing ability to manage a project, enhancing ability to be an effective leader, expanded understanding of ethical responsibilities. So as we look toward this age of AI, where technology is changing so rapidly, we know that we need to be flexible and that we need to continue to emphasize these kind of human-centered skills. And in this current moment, I hardly even have to say, but it has a lot of echoes of that same context that the HUA team identified at the founding of the WPI plan. Anxiety is about the double-edged nature of new technologies. Uncertainty is about the future of work. Environmental crisis resulting from technologies flourishing without concern for nature, and a foment for change in higher education. So as we move forward into this era, I just wanted to point out a few kind of principles that might help us stay centered on the humans. One is to keep students' well-being at the center. And we do this through our work with project teams, the way we coach and advise students. And for parents, you can imagine, or guardians who are sending their students off to university at this time when the very question of what it means to be human seems to be changing, they must feel a lot of comfort to know that their students are coming to a place where we care very much about the individual human. And we do a lot of work coaching and taking care of the individual human, even in the project work. We also emphasize collaborative processes. I've been moved by a body of work called Inclusive Excellence, which reframes excellence in education from exclusive outcomes to inclusive processes. And by this we mean let's start with getting the teammate dynamics right first, and the dynamics of working with partners. If we can get those processes right, the outcomes will take care of themselves. But let's look at our collaborative processes first. And continue aiming for a better world. And there's going to be different views on what it means to develop technologies for a better world with AI and all the different views of that. But let's keep an orientation toward doing the ethical things and make decisions for and set up opportunities for our students to have an experience of applying technologies in ways that make the world a better place. And finally, to continue to value connection and interaction. This is kind of a high contact kind of pedagogy. We should be kind of honest about that. It takes a lot of personal time with students. But I really see a future in which there's a bifurcation of higher education, in which some places are going to take the easy road and integrate AI in ways that result in less contact with students. And I actually think we need to continue going in the other direction and continue to provide that high contact, high touch, and high impact kind of pedagogy. So we'll continue to keep students at the center even as we integrate AI into our project-based learning more. And it's natural that students will be using AI in their projects because project-based learning has always accommodated new technologies because students are applying approaches, strategies, tools in an integrative way to solve problems. So they will be engaging AI in their projects, and you'll hear about that here in a moment, but we want to do that with students at the center. Okay, thank you. So I think we'll turn it over now to next steps.
Yeah, next steps. So if I could invite our student panelists to come up to the front, either occupy the first couple of chairs up here, or even if you want to kind of line up. We're going to try and do a kind of a quick pass throughout your projects. One of the great things about what you're going to hear from both the faculty and the staff and students today are some of the found pilots of what's already going on in our WPI ecosystem. So our student folks who are doing the short talks, yes, thank you so much. And we're just going to do a pass the mic. So I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to talk in between you. I believe that Team Romania chatbot was...
No,
oh, no, okay, sorry. LLMs communicating Morocco. All right, there you go.
Hi, I'm Everett Wilbur, and this summer I completed my HOA sequence at the Morocco HOA Project Center with Rebecca and Mohammed, along with 6 other students. While I was there, I did my HOA inquiry seminar with Dr. Moody by researching monarchical power in Morocco. I started the search by looking at how monarchical power was created and maintained, and how citizens perceived and reacted to it. At the end of a longer process, I ended up with a thesis, which is on screen, that said that in Morocco, the legally codified royal inviolability and power, the culturally ingrained corruption and self-censorship, and the information access limitations work together to produce and stabilize popular deference to the king. That stabilization mutes accountability, concentrates power and wealth, and thus functions as the core mechanism that is sustaining the Maksen. So writing is less accessible to me than other formats, and I didn't want the product of my research to be a paper, but I struggled with finding a format that wasn't just a paper with extra steps. I think conversationally, and even my academic writing tends to take this form. I had the idea of using a chatbot as a peer. I can explain my research to I can explain my research to the chatbot in my own way, and it can explain my research to users in the way that suits them best. I wanted my solution to preserve my role in the research process. It wouldn't supplement my ideas or generate new ones, and it isn't acting like a clone of me. It is just re-explaining what I said to it. While I was explaining my observations and related thoughts, it would ask clarifying questions and even challenge my assumptions, which improved my research process. While this was more accessible for me without encroaching upon my ownership of the work, it more importantly made my research far more accessible for everyone, regardless of education, age, language, or background. Whether the person is already experienced, or it's the first time hearing the words Arab Spring, the format adapts to them, not the other way around. People looking for a specific piece of information don't have to read a dense paper, and they can access the information as simply as they need to, whether it be a 10-sentence summary or a short back and forth made for Gen Z. Since some of you will be also interested in the technical details, I originally used GPT-5, but recently switched to Claude 4.5 because it is better at following instructions, produces better responses, and hallucinates less. I didn't fine-tune the model, and I have a very long prompt that tells the model all of the information it needs. Thank you.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. Good morning. We are Team Code for Romania. My name's Max.
I'm Olivia.
And I'm Delia.
And our project was providing chatbot assistance for Ukrainian refugee women in Romania. Our 2 advisors were Professor Eddie and Professor Danielski, and the team we worked with was Code for Romania, where we finished this project in D term of 2025.
So our project stemmed from the Russian invasion of Ukraine and how a lot of Ukrainians were displaced from their homes during that invasion. And so a lot of Ukrainians went to neighboring countries, and one of them being Romania. And they were looking for resources as they were in this new place with not much knowledge on the language. And so Code for Romania, our sponsor, created a website that had resources on it that they could use.
So the goal of our project was to assist Ukrainian women refugees in finding essential resources and information by evaluating the potential of an AI-powered chatbot assistant on Code for Romania's platform, Women's Center. There are two main platforms, Women's Center and Dopomoha. We ended up using both of them, but there's a big issue because the Romanian language is more Latin-based and the Ukrainian language is similar to Russian and Polish. So there is really no similarity in the two languages. So when people try to use the resources they have, it's very difficult for them to find this. So the importance of this was to help them find the information in the language that they are most fluent in.
And we started with 3 different prototypes for chatbots. The first was Zapier, then BotPress. Then we ultimately settled on Chatterbot. What we love about Chatterbot is it's mainly rule-based, and we can give it information that's fully accredited, and anytime you have a question, it will get an answer with valid information that's necessary.
A big aspect of our project was also looking at that humanitarian side of this. And so we conducted multiple interviews with professionals that worked closely with these refugees and got feedback from them on how they are struggling with these resources. We were able to give this information to our sponsors so that they could use it in the future. But some things that we were able to point out was some accessibility issues as well as some issues that might pop up with the chatbot itself. So we don't want it to give too personal advice, and we didn't want it to be therapist of any sort. And so we wanted to make sure there's definitely bounds set for the chatbot. And so we wanted to make sure that our sponsor was aware of both the technical side and the humanitarian side, since they were working with such a vulnerable community. And that's about it for our project.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We'll be talking about our IQP today, where we collaborated with the National Museum of New Zealand in order to understand how AI could be used to expand the visitor experience at the museum.
I'm Aditri.
I'm Ethan. So our goal was to advise Te Papa on how to use AI to best enhance the storytelling at the museum. And this is important because as the National Museum, Te Papa is one of the main cultural institutions of New Zealand. And as AI becomes more of an integrated part of our life, it's going to be natural that Te Papa is interested in using it for their operations. And we wanted to understand the best way to do this that respects not only the cultural barriers, but also the visitor experience and the staff at Te Papa. So we identified 3 main actions in order to achieve this. The first was to explore the limitations and standards of AI in the context of New Zealand. So this included not only the technical limitations, but also the cultural and legal. And the cultural was specifically very important to us in order to understand how certain groups on the island, specifically the Maori, who are the indigenous people, and different Pacific Islander communities view the use of AI, especially with their cultural information. Our second action that we identified was to gauge visitors' perceptions of AI and interactivity. And to do this, we surveyed visitors about their experience with the museum, as well as their general opinions on AI and how they could view AI being integrated at Te Papa in the future. And our third action was to assess engagement in prospective AI platforms and exhibits. And to do this, we interviewed experts at the museum who were in charge of the visitor experiences at the museum. This included not only the in-person exhibits, but also their online website, as well as their collections online that included millions of artifacts from all across New Zealand.
So the main outcomes of this project were 3 recommendations on how AI could be used both in person and online at the museum. Our first recommendation was to recommend that the museum curate an exhibition on how AI is currently being used in New Zealand and how AI can be used inclusively. So this recommendation came about from general feedback that we received, and also we noticed that many visitors were very curious about AI, but they were skeptical about its authenticity. Our second recommendation was to have Te Papa put up AI-driven personalized tours on their website. This recommendation came about as many visitors recommended it in our in-person surveys, as well as while we were in the museum, we were frequently asked where to start or where to find a certain exhibit or certain story. Our third recommendation was to have the AI enhance the museum's collections online platform. This recommendation came about from online surveys suggesting that the platform was very confusing and wanting to know more about the connectedness of different, pages on the website. So overall, we designed these recommendations to be intentional and to not replace current experiences at the museum, but rather enhance them. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Lucas Lamenya, and I'm here to talk about a little bit more of my journey through project-based learning at WPI and how AI has helped me through it and how I implemented it in my projects. So everything starts for me at Database Systems 1 when I took it with Professor Rodica Neamtu, and then I went on to do my work on my MQP with her and Professor Wilson Wong, where I implemented together with my group an AI model that could that was trained to translate SQL to NoSQL and vice versa. So this was a project that we worked in a group, and we had a little feature called generate a query. So it would just generate a simple query so that the users, non-tech savvy people who wanted to use this model to just test it, would be able to generate a general query that could be then used to translate and then explain to them and be explained to them. So moving on to my IQP, I had the chance to go to Venice to work on a project that would help disseminate information from past Venice Project Center projects to the general Venetian population, and this was using real data that they had gathered throughout 36 years of the project. And one of the ways that we found for non-tech savvy people to access this data and to ask the questions and get the answers that they could for this data was using a chatbot. This chatbot was trained on the schema, so the format of the data that we had, and then the user could then ask questions about it and have the answer to them straight, as we can see over here. So it uses SQL generation from the MQP project to retrieve the real world data that was gathered from past MQP projects at the Venice Project Center. And then I reached my thesis. So I come back from my IQP and I talked to professors Neamtu and Wong, and I told them, hey, I worked on this really cool thing during my IQP. How can we implement that into a project? So at first we tried to do something very similar, but then we realized that LLMs weren't particularly used to or particularly great at generating database queries. So we landed on an evaluation of how LLMs work with databases and their quality and how consistent they are and how confident they are in their results. So from the IQP, and this brings it back full circle, because the idea with this thesis is to then develop a tool that can then be used back into Database Systems 1, and then closing down this full circle that I had. So I started with Database Systems 1, and then I'm giving back to the class, more than just through the tool, because I've also returned as a PLA twice for that class, and just to help it back to the class that helped me start with this. So this is everybody who worked on my project, and yeah.
All right, and I believe this then moves us to the next portion, which is Rodica, are you our next speaker? We're going to have some faculty examples from their work. So I'll hand this over to you.
Thank you.
And you can be as mobile as you would like to be.
I would be as mobile as I like to be. So I like to use my new profile just for a couple of reasons. So I teach in the computer science department, and I am affiliated with the AI program. And usually when I start talking about AI, people look at me and like, easy for you to say. So my research interest has been in AI for many, many, many years. But what I want to talk to you today about is the fact that I am excited and I am embracing AI, but I am also reluctant about AI, and I am exuberant and yet concerned that we are going so fast in it. So my profile here wants to show you why. I scraped my faculty website from WPI, and I asked, this is DALI 2, I asked DALI to create an image that would summarize who I am as an academic and a researcher and what I do. So I would say, what is this showing you? That AI can do a lot, because I think it looks like me. I had longer hair at the time. However, if you look in the background, you will see misspelled words, words that have been contracted together, which show both the power and the promise and yet the limitations of AI. So with that in mind, I am enmeshed here at WPI, not just in teaching computer science and advising program in NQP projects, but I am also, the love of my work at WPI continues to be the global school and the directorship of the Bucharest Center. So what I am here to show you is, Lucas kind of gave it away, just so you know, my punchline is that I have decided in the last few years to change a little bit my teaching and learning paradigm. So as Lucas said, I do have a lot of students who like the classes that I teach. I practice a lot of very engaged learning, but that is as engaging as raise your hand, answer this little survey, talk, answer and ask questions. And I have discovered that actually organically my loop was broken somewhere. How was it broken? I always had students who would come to me and say, can we do an independent study together? Can we do an MQP together? And then I have the Romanian Center, whether for better or worse, my advisors have had to advise projects that use AI embedded at the core of them, because I do believe AI is embedded in the core of our lives. So similar to what Lucas was saying, I realized that they come, so they learn things in the classroom, AI enhanced or not, depending on the class. Then they come and we do a project together, and then, like Lucas, they go on to somebody else that has no connection. I don't even know who directs the Venice Center. All I know is that Lucas took my class, worked in an MQP project, and then I was so proud when he came back and he said, I use that in my IQP. My entire group embraced that. So that made me think, all right, now it is time for me to say, can I turn back and get these tools that are being created in projects, whether advised by me or others, and bring them back to my classroom? So my new philosophy of teaching is to use AI-centered pedagogical tools created by students for students. So how am I doing that? So like if you look, the boring stuff on the left is pretty much how a lot of the things that students learn in the database class are. They're not really boring, but they're presented in a consistent way to help the process of learning. So now, because students like him came to me, what you see at the top is a snapshot of a tool that an MQP group created last year that allows them to take the knowledge that they get about how to create a database and translate it in different dialects. That would be the equivalent of saying, if you can express yourself very well in English, can I help you translate that in any language you want without you having to necessarily learn how to do it, but prompting you to learn from that. If you want, you can constantly press a button and say, why are you doing it this way? How can I do it the other way? And then we had this other group that wanted to pick up on what they built. So there comes a second MQP that now says, well, but you have to know some databases to do that. How about if you don't know any databases? So there is the other tool that we created that allows you to say in plain English, I would like a database to keep track of everybody who's in the room right now. I want to know what you're all doing with AI, in what setting you're doing that, what would you like to learn, so I can then tailor something to a targeted audience. And last but not least, and this is like the the jewel in the crown. I had a student, she came to me, she wanted to do an independent study, and her tool, which I absolutely plan on integrating in my teaching starting next year, she has created not just the ability for people to create databases. She has the ability to give me any other Excel sheet that you have that has a lot of information, and I'll turn it into a database. I will implement, I don't mean, when I say I mean her tool, clearly. She creates the database, deploys the database, populates the database with data, and then allows you to ask questions, give what you want. And more importantly, and this is what I want to stop at every single step along the way, you can press a button and say, why? Why is it that way? Why is it not the other way? How can I do it this way? So, interestingly enough, one of my TAs is in the classroom today, and we were talking about how can this work for the future. So here are the three things that I think are important to me moving forward. As somebody who teaches both inside and outside the classroom, I want to create this, think of it as the circular economy of teaching, right? So teaching students in the classroom in this project-based learning means to me create the environment for students to learn by doing, but then capitalize on the tools that they can learn and foster engagement, if you want, at a different level. I think the time has come that we can, and we should, consider that our roles shift a little bit from just standing in front of the classroom, no matter how engaging we think we are, into actually collaborating with our students, allowing them to become part of the teaching, not just the learning process. Because if you embrace and incorporate a tool that has been created in collaboration with students, and don't get me wrong, it's not like you don't have, we have a lot to do with that, right? We tweak them, we ask, we do. But the mere fact that you step in a classroom and say, this is a tool that students like you who took my class 2 years ago or who went to Romania have created, and I invite you not just to use it to learn, but to advance it to the next level. Let's keep it current. Let's, like Lucas said, again, if you use AI enough, you understand how very limited it is. And I'm not saying that to burst anybody's bubble. It is a reality. And the more you use it, the more you realize that. So we need evaluation tools like the one that he's creating this year. We need to know how consistent are these models? How confident should we be in that? And we can do that using the students' input. And last but not least, I really think it bridges a little bit this gap between students being taught and actually students being part of the learning process and the teaching process at the same time. And it puts us back into what Stephen was saying. We do need to keep the humanity in order. And I think with more and more AI, the humanity has to come from us being more involved with each other, not less involved with each other. And I would love to chat with you a lot more, but I have classroom downstairs. I have a class downstairs in the next few minutes. So I'm gonna leave you with this last thing. What you see up there was the prompt. So I asked a lot of models because I don't trust any one of them. So I asked a lot of models to synthesize into oblivion the things that I have said to you and create a visual. So what it came to me eventually after many iterations is this idea of racing to the future, but racing to the future in a human and a deliberate and an intentional way that will not let AI drive us, but will help us drive ourselves by using this AI. And before I go, I do want to get back to this thing. I didn't want to start with it, but just so you know, I'm sharing this because part of what I want everybody to know is that, and I'm sure when Yunus comes around here, he will talk about that. The bias of AI is a real thing, and it's something that we all forget. Do you know how many times I had to create this until it came like that? About 14. You know why? Every single time I asked the model to scrape my website, it portrayed me as a white male with glasses. And I would get back and say, Professor Neamtu is not a white male, and he does not wear glasses. So my fight with several models was my fight with the bias, because clearly the kind of work that I do in the eyes of the beholder portrays me as a white male with glasses. No offense to all white male with glasses, but we do need an AI. So I guess what I'm saying is let's embrace it, but let's not forget that it's far from being a perfect tool, but it's a tool that we can all help our students become part of what builds the better tool of AI.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Reza Ebadi from the MME department and also the Morgan Teaching and Learning Center. So pretty much all of us know about the promise of project-based learning. It allows the students to think critically. We allow the students to work in teams, to collaborate, work on real-world applications rather than just sanitized projects limited to the syllabus of the course. And it's no surprise that it's evidently one of the most effective pedagogical tools in learning, specifically in engineering education. But there's a reality with it, and that is, at least in WPI and at least in engineering education, the 7-week term is barely enough to go through the fundamentals and allow the students to explore ideas that inherently is multidisciplinary. And at least in engineering education, everything is multidisciplinary. It's very hard to think of a robust project. Let me give you from the perspective of mechanical engineer. It's very hard to think of a robust mechanical engineering project that does not involve a little bit of a coding, that does not involve a little bit of a design or wiring or control. So for that, the students and the faculty tend to avoid the risks of going beyond what they're being taught in the class. And the main reason for that is the limit that they have on the support. The students may not get the support that they need at the time they need it, and the faculty may not have the resources to provide that support to the students when they need it. So as a result, at least based on my own experience, the projects in engineering education has remained rather rudimentary, although it had a great promise, but the reality keeps the project relatively rudimentary and within the bounds of the syllabus. What I have experienced so far, and I think it's going to grow positively in the next few years, is we could take advantage of AI in order to address that problem. We could use the AI as the first point of contact for the students. The students could just use it as the first point of contact when they have a challenge. They can just ask the questions, they can come up with the solution, and they can move on. And with this, they will remain within the flow of learning rather than disrupting that flow, find the time to meet with the faculty or the TA, get the answer, relay it back to the team, and try to work it into the project. That they can just use that with AI and proceed. Also, with the use of AI, some tasks can become trivial. For instance, if I'm teaching mechanical engineering and I'm teaching experimentation, in my course, the engineering experimentation, the design, that's the primary. And things like coding and brainstorming and writing, it would be trivial. And of course, it would be different if someone is teaching coding. Of course, the primaries are going to change. So if you allow the students to use AI to get help with those trivial tasks, I think you can raise the bar of the project and make them more complicated now that they don't have to be occupied for all those tasks. To give you an example, there is this course, Engineering Experimentation. I taught it for the first time in A term, and now I'm teaching it for the second time in B term. It's a project-based learning course in engineering education, specifically in mechanical engineering. And traditionally, the way that it works is we introduce a few sensors throughout the course to the students. We provide code snippets and they work with it, and for their projects, they tend to come up with the projects that they use the same sensors and the same codes, because it's not easy to learn to work with the other sensors and to apply the codes for them. What I have done is I have just asked students to use AI for brainstorming, to come up with the projects that they may not be relatively bounded to the course. Actually, I have required them for their projects to use the sensors that I do not use in my lab. So they have to go and find sensors. They have to learn how to work with those sensors, how to code that sensor, how to troubleshoot it. And as a result, I have seen that their learning has been expanded. Now they have the opportunity to work with the sensors that may not be introduced in the class. And that's the idea, because I don't think anyone expects the students to work with what they have learned in class, but rather, as Steve suggested, as Steve showed, for the WPI plan is, we want the students to learn how to learn. So this allows them to do that. And of course, it deepens their mastery. It focuses their shift instead of syntax and troubleshooting and debugging onto engineering, experimentation, and design. This, of course, comes with a little bit of a risk. Not all the students are comfortable using AI. Not all the students like to use AI. I'm currently running a survey on WPI students, and to my surprise at least, more than 30% say that they are against the use of AI. So just to assume that they want to use AI, it would not be accurate. And if we introduce this without the consideration that not everyone is comfortable or willing to use it, but raise the status of the course or make the equation or projects more challenging, now we are risking some students to fall behind because they are not willing to use the tools that everyone else is using, and that's something that we would like to avoid. To move forward, I have a few recommendations for the faculty. I think we need to start small. We need to scale thoughtfully. We need to make sure that we teach to the students that they can use AI as a tool, then use it as a crutch. We need to make sure that we redesign the assignments so it focuses mostly on verification, focuses mostly on critical thinking, reasoning, design, and I think we could just relax a little bit of the requirement of the dead accurate solution rather than the process. I think it would be a little more important. And of course, we must make sure that we provide supports for the students who are hesitant to use AI. That comes in different forms. You could provide lecture demos, you could provide one-on-one instructions, so forth and so on. And lastly, I think as instructors and the faculty, we need to invest in professional developments on our own side to make sure that we can implement AI effectively into our pedagogy. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for listening.
Thank you, Reza. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And I think the dialogue is important as we shape PBL and AI. So I believe, just like the other speakers, there are a lot of things you would probably want to zero in on. I wanted to talk about, I mean, this is based on MQP's dialogue with other different fora groups that I've been in. And there's a mandate from corporate that says embrace AI or face the exits. Recent Wall Street Journal publication articulate this very well. And we also know that the threat is not just about replacing human beings, which I don't think we will get there. AI won't replace humans, but AI will replace humans without AI skills. And that is the infographic that they show. On my part, I just wanted to draw these tensions that exist in AI, PBL, and then also as we integrate AI and PBL, and see what we can make as designers and also as PBL professionals. The first one is the corporate agency, and then the user skepticism. There's a Gallup survey that says 40% of US workers, and I was very surprised, 40% of US workers who don't use AI don't believe that AI will help their tasks or personal business in any way. Well, there's a tension because you have to adopt it because of corporate America expect that. The other thing is that even with all this adoption, we see that 5% of only the 300 AI initiatives, there's a research by MIT, surveyed has some quantifiable value with AI adoption. We see this a lot with most technologies. All right. So whilst we push for urgency as a community, how do we help with this skepticism? To bring in the others who are sitting on the sidelines. And this is very important, and this is why I think PBL is very critical, because AI just takes the structure to another level. And we see that more and more structure just creates this robotic way of thinking. But the project-based learning now forces us to unpack a little bit and humanize the way we do things. And I think that if we are true to our understanding of PBL, there is the fluff misconception. Again, that emanates from the some groups who believe that has AI been, has PBL achieved academic rigor in the way it does. Well, the case that I make, and this is a first-hand discussions as I work during the summer, the case I make is that, well, if there is that misconception, or if that is the case, then we will see a lot of instructors finding it easy to come out of their comfort zone to apply AI, PBL in their instructional design. So PBL must prove the deep knowledge acquisition, okay? Must prove that deep knowledge acquisition is the right, it's at the heart of project design to unravel or to deal with this internal debate. Now, so these are some identification or observations with these two, with AI and PBL. So that's integrated, I think, of the design and the focus. One of the things we've heard a lot about, we've heard a lot this morning, is about the use of chatbot and all that. These are high-level personalized engagement or learning. So AI is pushing the frontiers in terms of how we can engage. So it means that engagement is not just enough to make the case for PBL. Makes sense, right? So what we have to do is to shape the rules that instructors and for us have, which is to how do we effectively design feedback. So all of these systems, chatbot and all of that, would now kind of delegate or take out the instructor. So how do we design so that we do not, how do we design these feedback shifting rules so that we are not just givers of the feedback? And one of the things that I say is that for PBL, we need to humanize pedagogy in a way that deals with the commodification that we see with corporate America. And this is where our students want to achieve efficiency, but at the same time, at the heart of driving this high level efficiency, we need to scale back a little bit. This is where I believe the debate lies, which is designing or dealing with human architects, dealing with these issues as architects of it, and not just going with the flow of adopting AI. Thank you very much.
Last but not least. You walk on music. I know, right? That's the one thing we didn't do.
Hi everyone, my name is Yunus, the terrible color choice here. And I want to take actually where Daniel left, the presentations, and I want to ask a very similar question about like humanizing science. Okay, let me start here. I want to go back like 100 years, and this sociologist Max Weber, some of you might have heard of his name. There's a famous lecture he gave in the University of Munich, and this is a terrible time in Germany. He feels, and a group of students that was in the room, felt that this is the technology created this radicalized transformation in their society. And then his question was, which I feel really relevant for today, what is the value of science? And this is the lecture he created he offered this term, the disenchantment of the world. And at the time he was thinking about bureaucracy, militarization, and the kind of the managerial capitalism that was emerging. And then one of the just to quote him, he has this insistence on the question that we have to ask, and that relates to the meanings of science that go beyond the purely technical and practical. Now I want to fast forward to today. So the instrumental rationality of the disenchanted world hasn't just continued, it has become algorithmic. So Weber was worried about, like I said, bureaucracy and industrialization, but what about our world? What about our world in which AI is believed to automate decision-making, discovery, and analysis? What kind of challenge we have in terms of the meaning of science? And this is where I believe that PBL offers an antidote that actually helps students to remember the value of science is in seeking and discovering meaning in their actual practice. And how they do it? By putting their values and aspirations at the very center of scientific and technological work. So in this way, in PBL, AI, and I would disagree, I guess, with some of the folks here, isn't just a tool, but it becomes a sort of a question, a medium, perhaps for thinking about how do we transform ourselves, our societies. And I think it has that potential only within the framework of PBL. All right, so, and we all we all love PBL, so we know actually how it is different from conventional learning. One thing that we do not, I think, highlight enough is the last one, which is the integrative approach to technology. I think this is really valuable because in many PBL projects that I have seen, technology is always seen as adjustable, adaptable, and essential only if it helps to address a question. And I think that is really meaningful and important for our moment. And I want to highlight that I believe not only a good social skill, but it's also a good technical skill. I believe that the technical excellence comes also with the ability to know when a technical thing is not useful in that very context. So for me, from my perspective, I guess, I'm biased, of course, but I believe that being a great technologist involves actually to know when not to use AI. And that I think that is available within the PBL pedagogical methods. So what else does PBL provide to offer the students in projects? So I think that many students, doing these projects are able to learn to continuously evaluate ethical concerns in real time. So not just an ethics module at the end, not as an afterthought, but in real time as they emerge. So that they can also see what happens if they scale this AI solution. They can understand who's left out, who's harmed by this. And obviously the third one, we need people to knowledgeable people about AI who can inform policymakers. And the last one, I think it's really important, and I believe that PBL does this really well. Because of its pedagogical orientation, students learn to navigate trade-offs. Because all technical decisions will come with value conflicts. You have to choose between, let's say, like, building a large data set and also concerns about individual privacy. How are you going to navigate this? How are you going to, help students, understand this in practice? And I think PBL is extremely valuable here. So I believe we need to update Weber's question. And here it might look like, my suggestion that it might look like this. Can we afford to train scientists and technologists who don't understand how facts and values interview in the AI technologies they create? And obviously, I think it's not possible, and that's my invitation for us to think about PBL through that lens. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for sticking so well to time. So I'm going to invite one more showcase of student projects. Yunus is stepping in as the new director. No, you can still sit down. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. The new director of the Great Problem Seminar, and we have one fantastic example with you all. So can I turn this over? Who would like the microphone?
I think me.
Okay.
Yes, we're doing it this way. This is a group project.
Group project.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Jillian Smith. This is Laura Roberts. Together we are co-teaching a GPS this term and last term, AI, Design, and Society. And we wanted to share a little about what we're doing in the GPS, and then also what better than our students to be able to say what they're doing in the GPS. So in terms of the context that we're working in for PBL, our big interest in AI, Design, and Society is trying to understand AI as a design technology that exists within a much broader ecosystem than just the tool of AI. Right? So we're really trying to think broadly about what AI is, how it operates, how to think critically about it, and how it fits into our society. We're trying to push against this narrative of AI as a revolutionary technology, not because it won't be, because it may well be, but because we think that it doesn't position us in a way to be able to talk about our future in meaningful ways if we assume that that's the technology and the story about that technology coming from AI companies is the only story that we can tell and is leading us to the only kind of future that we could have. We're trying to think about design as something that is a practice that we use to holistically imagine future rather than solely solve problems, right? So we're not trying to think about how does AI solve an educational problem, but we're trying to flip it and say, how can we think about the future that we want to have, and what role does AI play in that or not play in that future? And so our great problem really has been, how do we do this kind of imagining in an equitable way? And how can we bring our students' voices in to co-designing and co-imagining the future of the university? We shouldn't be the ones who decide this for them. These are some of our lovely first-year students. We should let them try to decide this with us. So in our GPS, this is a blend of game design and development education and ethics of generative AI education, and we're trying to blend this through project-based learning. So on the game design side, we want our students to be learning about iterative and imaginative design processes, how to seek and respond to feedback from people, and how to gain some further experience in some of the practical skills that go into making games, whether that's programming, visual arts, writing, or some combination of these. And on the ethics of generative AI side, we're interested in looking at it kind of at three scales, from the individual perception and experience of it, up through societal and cultural context, and into some of the hidden costs of it. And as we all know, PBL lets us do this in a lot of exciting ways and helps our students develop professional skills in teamwork and communication and things like this. I am now going to hand it off to our students who are going to talk a little about the projects that they're working on. The prompt that we gave them was to create games that represent in some way a future of WPI that a hopeful, we had a lot of conversation about dystopian futures, a hopeful future of WPI. It was very hard to get to hope, but we got there. A hopeful, mostly, a hopeful future of WPI and what role they think AI is playing in that hopeful future. And the hope is that through them making these games, they can think through these ideas in more depth, and then through people playing these games, it can facilitate a conversation about it in the future. All right, who's going pass it on? Attack your workload.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicholas Kuntz.
I'm Gus Hardman. And I'm Hayden Fallon. And our game that we're designing is called Attack Your Workload.
In Attack Your Workload, exclamation mark, the player plays as a WPI student who is fighting through their college workload in order to reach their end goal of graduation. Through the game, we hope to teach WPI students different types of study habits and show them how AI can play a role in how they learn.
Throughout our research, we found that AI can have a positive impact on students' studying techniques, but only when used responsibly. So you have to take into account both the benefits and drawbacks of using AI for different study techniques before students, teachers, or faculty implement it into the curriculum.
In the game, players will make their way through various levels where enemies are homework assignments, school responsibilities, and exams. And as they make progress through the games, they will unlock new abilities corresponding to different study habits, which can then be augmented by AI, offering certain drawbacks, but also benefits to correlate with how, when AI is used, can improve or worsen how you study as long as you use it responsibly, or whether or not you use it responsibly. It should teach students how to responsibly use AI without compromising their learning.
Yeah, that's a game.
All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Erickson, and I'm representing Students versus the Clock. Ours is a card game where our AI message is that excessive use of AI actually deteriorates critical thinking skills. So we did a lot of research on that, and we determined that our hopeful future will be a place where AI is actually put on the back burner and used as a tool to help with studying, grammar check, and checking your own work, rather than delegating all of your work to it. For our game, we show that AI actually might seem like the right option at first, especially with time pressures that all students face. But in reality, it makes it really hard for people to succeed in the future, especially with this loss of critical thinking skills. So in future grades of college, and moving on to the work field, it makes it really hard to succeed if your whole time was spent just delegating work to AI. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Who here has ever used AI to complete something for them? Well, if you have, I'm sure you can understand how easy it is to become too overly dependent on it, especially for students. I'm Spencer, this is Garv, and this is the game we're working on called Interview Pi.
Yeah, so our game is a Monopoly-style board game, and it's taking place at our very own WPI career fair. Students, players have the chance to move around the board and go to different companies and apply for jobs using their resume cards, which have different keywords on it. And then the companies also have company cards, and you have to match your keywords to see if you can get the job. Students also have the chance to pick up AI cards, which can be useful or it can be harmful. Like in some ways it can add keywords to your resume and it can help you get jobs in the future. Sometimes, like one of our cards is you get caught using AI, so you can't get the next 2 jobs you apply for. So yeah, we try to use those AI cards to relate back to our message, which is sometimes it can be good if it's used correctly, but it's best not to rely on it because of the downsides.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move into, this is all proactive. What we're going to do now is we're going to move into the discussion section. And Kimberly, you're going to be our wonderful facilitator. Also remind folks that there are snacks and coffee over in the corner if you also want to refresh yourself as we go.
Yes. I like the idea of people getting caffeinated before they have to talk with each other. Okay, so I think one of the things that we're hearing is about all of these tensions. We're also hearing from this last group about the possibility of a hopeful future for WPI. And if we can hold both of those in our minds at the same time, I think that we have the opportunity to do some really cool things at WPI. So for those of you who may have heard at the faculty meeting last week, there is going to be an ongoing set of opportunities for faculty to really do, and staff and students, to do what we did when we created the original WPI plan. So Jesse Hill and Anna Gold are going to be facilitating a series of conversations and activities and all sorts of goodness that invite people in to reimagine what the WPI plan could look like. And I think of this white paper and the associated work as a bit of a bridge to that. So what I'm going to offer to you is to invite you to start some of those conversations. If you are sitting by yourself at a table, feel free to hop to a table next to you. And I'm going to invite each table to start out by talking through what would you like to see WPI look like 25 years from now? If you could have an ideal version of WPI, what would that feel like? What would it look like for you? What would classes look like? Would there be classes? You can be as open as you'd like with this conversation. I'm gonna give us 10 minutes and then check in, and I'll give you a sneak peek at the next step. So after we have some conversation at the tables, I'm then going to be inviting each of you to think about what you would need to be able to do to live in that future. And so if you would like to think about this with your group for 10 minutes, and then we'll check in and see if people want to keep imagining a hopeful future or if people want to move into thinking about what they can do to be empowered in it. Sound good?
You don't have a choice, I guess.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming, for the conversation. I just wanted to wrap up a few small things here at the end. One, we've been listening, we've been taking a lot of notes. If there are any things that you're interested in sharing with us that we haven't captured today, please feel free to email us. We're happy to engage with that. The other thing is you're going to be getting a follow-up survey in the next few days just to say, what did you learn? What things would you volunteer? Are there things that are happening in your worlds that are really interesting that you want to share? Again, yet another thing that we just want you to be on the lookout for. I'm going to hand it back to Kimberly. We have the room until 1 o'clock, and we have more cookies and other delightful things. So please keep talking if you are engaging and interested, and thank you again.
So will these ideas be